Good morning, everybody. We'll be starting the webinar right away. Give everybody a few more seconds to come on. Well, so glad everybody could come on the webinar, the WCO webinar this morning. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to the Western IM Outlook Connector for OpenText Documentum New Features webinar. That's quite a mouthful. My name is Rick Sterling, and I'm the president of Western IM. I'd also like to introduce our lead developer, Troy Sawyer, who will be showing you the new features today. Troy?
Hi everyone.
And just wanted to say a few things before Troy gets going, is the Western IM Outlook connector for OpenText Documentum, the WCO for short, has been around for well over a decade now and is currently being used in and out of North America. There are two distinct groups on the webinar today. The first are existing clients who are waiting to implement this newest version of the connector. And the second group consists of people who have or are interested in Documentum and looking for ways to help their users deal with email management. To the first group, thanks so much for being with us for so many years, and you're going to love these new features. For both groups, though, you may not hear everything that you want today, since we may not have the time to cover full depth of features in the WCO product. It's really just highlighting the new features that exist today. If by the end of the webinar you don't hear all that you need to hear, and we don't answer all your questions, feel free to reach out at sales@westernim.com, and we'll be really happy to talk to you one-on-one about any of those questions you might have. Everyone that registered for this webinar will receive a link to the recording, so if you want to have others in your organization view it, you will be able to show it again on your schedule. Your mics are muted, but you can also ask questions in the Zoom webinar by typing them in. There should be a Q&A button on your screens. At the expiry of the session today, we'll hopefully be able to give you answers. And any we don't get to will definitely get answered, but it could be by email if time runs out. For the technical folks that are on today that need the technical information, this version of WCO runs on Microsoft Outlook 2016, 2019, and Office 365. Uses 16.4 RESTful services, that's for Documentum connection, and is written in .NET. And since it's an Outlook add-in, you will need to be using the desktop installation of Outlook. I'll just pass you over to Troy now, who will take you through the new features in today's webinar. Just before he gets going, though, I want to say that I personally use this connector every day of the year, and I know you're just going to love it. Troy, over to you.
Thanks, Rick. I'll actually just share my screen here. So we'll actually, for the purposes of this, we'll actually just be looking at Outlook. There's going to be no slides or anything. It'll be a live demo all the way through of all these things. To start, basically, why version 6? We've had the Outlook connector for many, many years now, and it's always been a great tool for filing email or accessing Documentum. But coming into the version 6 and why we've kind of updated to this version has been, we've added a bunch of capability and functionality that allows you to do a lot more with Documentum. We have a lot of records people, a lot of records folks that use the Outlook connector or are responsible for the Documentum system. So things like versioning and check-in and check-out has been something that wasn't in previous versions. We did release the check-in, check-out stuff before version 6, but that was at a request. The other areas that have kind of been built out for the Outlook connector are more around, as an organization, how do we adhere to or encourage users to be able to follow things like internal policies when it comes to filing, where they file to and how they file, as well as things like naming conventions, for example, on documents, or if we have templates for expense forms at our organization. So I'm just going to start by going through some hypothetical scenario here. Basically, I got a couple emails that came in today, and most of today is going to be around a project management scenario. So previously, the first incarnation of this first feature actually had to do with shipping routes. So we had a client that needed to be able to push out folder structures for users using Outlook to manage things like shipping documents, and now has kind of been extended into more of a project management base, but also a tool to be able to allow users that might not know what our corporate standard is when it comes to, hey, what do we do when we create a new project, or how do I file my contracts? So the first feature we'll look at here is actually called our sync folder creation. And what this gives the regular Outlook user is some extra context menu items that can give them the capability to build a folder structure for a project, for example, we'll look at today. But because in the organization, we have kind of standards on what folders we build, we do all this for them. So I'm actually just going to select our configuration for our Western IM projects. And you can see here it changed different naming conventions for different configurations of this, but all of this is configurable. Even when it comes to the dropdowns, these are actually Documentum objects that exist that say, okay, when a user is looking to make a WIM project, let's ask them for the client, for example. So here I'm going to make a client. So we're going to say Western IM, and it's going to be a project type. We have a couple of different projects that we like to do. So this one's going to be a services project, and we'll give it a project number. Now, what this does is the user knows this information because that's what they're working on. But as an organization in our Documentum system, we want to file documents to particular areas of our repository. So when I create this, I'm actually going to hit create. And what it's just done is it's actually created folders in my Outlook that we've said in our configuration that these are what we build for our projects. Now, what actually happened in Documentum, I've specified that when a user creates that project, that's actually going to line up with a certain section of our repository based on our naming convention and our folder structure we got. And it actually automatically mapped these folders to our Documentum folders. So now this was a feature we've always had, the ability to map folders from Outlook to Documentum, but this gives you the capability of giving some automation for a regular user that's just looking to do their filing for a particular project, for example. So from here, by default, we have them disabled. A new feature here, we can enable and disable parts of our tree structure. This has come in handy for people that are like, well, I'm going to do my work, and when I'm done, I'll file away. Don't file it away right away. So this is how you can turn that on and off. So I'm just going to drag and drop an email into my contracts folder, for example. And what we're going to see here is in my contracts folder in Documentum, that document got filed. Oop, I think I just copied and pasted and did it twice. But here now we can see the email that I just put into that contracts folder got moved over within my file plan. As a regular user, I've created this in my Outlook, and I didn't even know this existed or needed to know this existed in my Documentum system. It all got created automatically. To build on this, we actually now have the functionality where our Outlook folders become links to our Documentum corresponding locations. So as I click on different areas in my file plan, it's taking me to that place within Documentum. So I'm going to select a different one here. So Western IM, this other project we have here, this product for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When I clicked on working documents, it's now taking me to that area. So now I can have my Outlook folders, not just places where I can put my documents to file away, but also to navigate and use the content within Documentum. I'm just going to hop back to my inbox here. I'm going to kind of deal with a couple of these other emails here. Let me look at this first one here. So here, can you please file this attachment? So I've sent myself, this came from me, I said, can you please file this away? Maybe this came from an outside consultant or whatever. We've always had the ability to kind of drag and drop to file things away. So this is a contract, we'll say we'll throw it in there as well. But because we also have the Outlook folders, these Outlook folders can also take those documents as well. And that does the automatic filing for us as well. So here it's taking me to that folder, and I've now filed there. In recent versions, we've also enabled the ability to take documents from outside, so we can drag and drop documents from outside. But now that we have these map folders and Outlook can handle those, we can also file them directly to Outlook folders. So now we're kind of creating a situation where Outlook and how I file is becoming my ability to use and adhere to things like the security policy within Documentum or our naming conventions with our projects and folders. I'm gonna hop back to my inbox here. Now that we've kind of, moving on a little bit here, now that we've kind of have content going in and we've had, you know, our ability to create a project and put things away, how do we actually use the content that's in there? Previously, it was great. We could attach documents to emails and such. But what we wanted to do is, again, we've got this great repository that has, you know, security on it. How do we keep using that even within our Outlook interface? So we've actually elaborated on our insert link to item into new message. Previously, what this did is it just gave you a link to be able to take you to the web top version of the document. But now within the Outlook connector, we can send links directly to people, and their Outlook connector will then tell them, hey, this email that you just got is a document. Would you like to go to the folder or document for it? So this is what the email looks like, and I would just send it to whoever I would like to send it to. And when they get this email, it's going to look something like this. So this is the second email here. When I clicked on it, this email was actually a link sent from me to this account saying Wim Test, I was logged in Wim Test when I sent this, has sent you this document. And you notice my Outlook connector actually is asking me if I want to go to that folder or just to the document. Just like we were doing with the folders, how our folders became links to certain areas of our file plan, our emails can now become links to documents. Anytime I click on this or open it, it's going to prompt me to say, hey, this email is actually a link to a document. Would you like to go to it? So I can go to that folder. One of the other things that we've really elaborated on now that we have our check-in and check-out functionality, we've often run into situations where clients will have items, or other users will have items checked out, and they no longer have the ability to edit that document because it's been checked out by somebody else. So here I've got a couple of documents. This key here says that it's checked out to me. This lock says it's actually checked out by a different user. And because it's checked out for a different user, I can't actually check this out to make an edit to it, but I can request that user check it in. So just like we did with the linking or sending an email to a user to give them a document, this is going to send them an email saying, can you please check this in for me? This is actually checked out to a user, and it actually automatically populated based on the Documentum user's email address. So the user doesn't even need to know the user's email address when checking it in. And then when we send this off, that user will get a prompt to check the document in automatically. Now I don't have one here for me, but I can show you what that screen looks like if I actually go to check this document in. Just as when I received this email, it was a link to a document, our check-in screen will prompt the user saying, can you check this document in automatically? And here, just like regular Documentum functionality, we can check in the same version, new, minor, or major version as well. So I'm going to check that document in because I'm done with it. This allows the next user to come along and work on the document. So say I've made some changes to this, you know, our admin guide for WCO. I'm done my changes, and I can say, hey, Rick, can you now, you know, do your reviews on this? And then when he receives this email, he'll then be able to check it out and work on it himself as well. And then he'll receive that as an email. So kind of take a step back here. Outlook's always been, or WCO has always been a great tool to file email. Now we're giving users and the records folks the ability to give regular users the ability to adhere to policies and procedures within our organization, whether it's folder structures, whether it's the collaboration process, and then to the next step. Now that we've always been able to file, but how do we actually create new content? So previously people would, use their My Documents and they create a new document somewhere on their C drive or on the network drive and work on it. And then when they were done, they would put it in Documentum. And as a user, I feel this is something I use all the time for like my time logs, for example. We've got some documents in our repository that anytime I'm working on a project, I'll go to that project. I'll check out the document that we're keeping track of, time towards project, and update that document and check it back in. But how do we actually create that to begin with, still using our Documentum repository? So we have a new area called our document templates. So from here, we can actually see I've got a bunch of different templates set out. And in here, the main ones, I got blank document, container document. I'll look at this one a little bit later. But you can see a couple of special ones in here where this is an expense form, for example. This goes back to kind of what I was initially talking about with, hey, we've got folder structures that everybody should be using, or we've got, expense forms as an organization. How do we make sure everybody's using the same one? It shouldn't be, let's go to the shared drive and take that and copy it to your C drive and do your changes on it and then put it into the repository. Let's do it right in Documentum. So I'll go down and kind of show where these live later, but you can see here, this actual expense form has DM admin and today's date on it. I'm actually logged in as DM admin here currently. So this expense form, if I was logged in as Troy, would say expense form Troy and then today's date. Or for our meeting agenda here, we have the date for the meeting agenda automatically being generated in the object name. So whenever anybody creates their expense form in Documentum using this functionality, everybody's going to be following the same naming convention. This also gives you the capability to do things like predefine some of the metadata, for example. So this one here, this just to note, this is new as well, the properties screen as well. And this loads from the display configuration from Documentum. So it'll look the same as what you have in the other one. When I created this template, I said the name was going to be generated by something, but we can also predefine the other metadata fields as here as well. I'm just going to focus on these ones. So I think this is right. I'm just going to go add a title to this, and then the user's filing into the folder that they're currently looking at. So you can see this is just a terrible old template I found. And what it did is it actually created it into the current folder that I'm in, checked it out to me, and opened it up for me to continue to work on. So I'm just going to put November 26th. We're going to put expense 1. We're going to put some numbers to this, whatever it might be. So now you can see it's not living on my C drive. Everything, we're still managing it in place in Documentum. So here I'll make it I'll save this here, and then I'm just going to close. And Documentum, the Outlook connector notices that I've closed the document, and it'll actually ask me to check it in right away as well. So this is a new feature as well. So we're going to put this away. So you can see as right from the beginning with this project, we created a new project. We've got some folders here that are automatically being linked to areas in the file plan. We're filing emails that we're getting from users saying, here's some documents for it. And then how do we actually create content and then edit and collaborate on content right within the Outlook connector. Like I said, the check-in and check-out was released early from 6, but it was intended for 6 as well. So I'm just going to quickly create a new, one more here. This one here, congratulations, we got a new project. Let's go kind of right from beginning to end here. So this is a new project, and here's the documents for Brian Hines Library Service Project that we're going to be starting here. And they want me to create a status meeting, or yeah, we're going to have a status meeting on Monday, December 2nd. So let's do that right from the beginning. So right from the beginning, we're going to say we're going to create a folder for WIM projects, and we're dealing with Brian Hines library. And what did we say this was a services project, and we didn't give it a project number, but we'll generate one here. We'll just say 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to create that. So now this folder structure got built here. It got built in Documentum. And just note, if another person comes along and actually this was sent to say me and Rick, and we're both going to be doing this in our Outlook, if I created it first and it already existed in Documentum, Rick's folder structure would also get built, but linked to that same folder structure that I built. Again, trying to have consistency of where people are filing across the organization and how they're filing. So we've got some folders here. We're going to turn it on right away to start filing stuff. We've got some location information. We'll say contacts, some client information. We're going to start filing some of this away. And maybe this resource one goes to reference material. Maybe we'll just file the whole email because it was a correspondence email. So now our Brian Tynes project has got a couple of documents in our correspondence. For some reason, we're getting two filed. The attachments were getting filed. Maybe I already had terms and conditions document here for reference material. We'll drag that in. So now we had a whole bunch of content. We've used Outlook connector, how it was kind of built in the first place to kind of file stuff. We've extended to our folder structure. We'll create some new content here. A couple of other key features with this that we can do with the templates. We call them tags, but essentially this container one actually has an auto tag on it. And it says, don't even prompt the users for the metadata information, just create it automatically. We can bypass the prompt screen as well. So here, this is a box inventory list that's going to go along with this project as well. I'll close it here and check it in. And then that email that was initially sent to me said, here, can you make we'll do on a project plan. We want an agenda for the meeting coming up. You'll create a meeting agenda. This one's document date. So this is actually going to be, what do we say, December 4th. So this was automatically generated for today, but we can always edit. We can allow the users to edit this as well. Or we said December 4th, didn't we? And we're going to make the document date for next Wednesday as well. And this is where we'd start working on content, all within the Documentum repository. So when I'm done this and I say, okay, I've created the meeting agenda, it's all been updated and all the line items are there. Let's send this out to some people. We're going to say, hey, Brian, I don't have all the contacts in this login, but we're going to say Brian and Rick. I'm going to say Rick as well. We're going to send that out to them. So they're going to get this link to that document staying within the repository. This is also great kind of to take a step back and see why is this great for the IT staff, is that our Exchange servers, all our attachments are not getting passed around in the Exchange server as well. So this gives, you already have a great repository. You know, we're really bad these days, especially when it comes to email, with our emails becoming our repositories, especially as an individual in an organization. Your repository is usually your email. This helps you kind of move into using that corporate repository that you've invested so much in to begin with. We'll send that off to them. We generate a bunch of information in here as well. So if they want to go, they don't have the Outlook connector, here's a link to go to Documentum application directly. I didn't have it set up right, but that's just a DRL that goes to it. So that would link to the repository. It tells them where it is if they need to navigate to it exactly. And this is little tag down here is where the magic happens, where these tags are what's prompting some of the functionality with the automation in the Outlook connector, whether it's the links or prompting people for the requests for check-ins. Yeah, so those are the new things I wanted to highlight. I know there's a lot of people that have not seen the basic functionality, but I hope you kind of picked up on some of the things that were happening as I was going through filing, the whole dragging and dropping. You notice a lot of times when I'm dragging and dropping, items are getting filed to the repository based on behind the scenes type mapping. So you can see here this meeting agenda, when I created it, it was a WIM document that was based on the template. But when I filed an email, the email got filed as a WCO mail message, for example. And that's some automatic mapping that's happening behind the scenes. So I know people that currently have the Outlook connector, when they're filing based on their Documentum Outlook connector mapping. But this template gives you that additional functionality to be able to specify other types and additional metadata fields. Well, I've had this used in a particular place where when they were creating invoices, they are always getting tagged with a file or a classification code, for example. And that's something that could be unique just to the invoice template.
Troy, this is Rick. We have somebody asking a question about duplicate emails, so which would be kind of basic functionality, I guess, on our Outlook connector. If two people had an email, would they be able to know whether somebody else had already filed it or not?
Yep, this is something we've had in the Outlook connector since the beginning, pretty much, I believe. So I'm just going to go back to this area. So let me find an email that actually, when I filed it, it would have been filed automatically. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to turn on my duplicate checking. And if my mapping is set up correctly, there's a unique, and how this works, just to let you know, there's a unique entry ID that's generated by the mail server when the email is generated. And that's what we track. So as long as that's mapped correctly for me here, I'm going to file that into correspondence. I'm going to take this one here. I'm going to file it into correspondence. And I've already filed this somewhere else in the repository. I know this is a really old email in a past demo I filed, and it's going to say, this email was already filed. Are you sure you want to file it again? So it doesn't just block duplicates. It allows the user to make the decision or not whether it needs to be put in again.
I guess that would make sense, wouldn't it, Troy? Because sometimes the security might be different on certain places that it gets put away.
Yep. Yeah. Whether it's security. Yeah, that would be the main reason. Maybe it does make sense to file it in two places, but Documentum has the linking capabilities that might be able to accommodate some of that. But in some cases, it might make sense to do it, and it gives the user the option to be able to make that call.
We had another question, Troy, that came in about kind of volume. So I guess this relates to kind of can we handle big volume of emails in the Outlook connector?
Yeah, so I'm just going to take all of these emails here we're talking. I got 36, and I'm just going to pick one of these random folders that doesn't have anything in it yet. So in Documentum, we don't have anything here, and I've copied 36 to my clipboard, and I'm just going to paste them in here. Ooh, let me do that again. I think I had something else copied. Copy all these, and let's paste them in here. And since that's mapped, all these are going to start getting filed. I have my notification for duplicates. I'm going to say file, and hopefully we don't get, let me turn off the duplicate checking so we don't ask me for everyone, because all of these have been already filed. I'm going to say yep. So here you can see we're filing a bunch of things. And what I'm going to do, actually, I'm just going to paste this a couple of times. So we're going to get a bunch of items in here. So we got 230, and you can see that it'll start, I pasted too many times. I think it's trying to catch up. But yeah, you can see here we're filing all this email. We've a couple of the metrics we've had, it's been pretty successful. There was a large project where we did a filing of about 3.2 million emails. That was done over a couple of weeks, but the individual performance metrics has been best case scenarios around 15, 20,000 emails an hour. But you can see here it's filing away all these emails. We can see 182, 180, just to kind of give you an idea how it works. And we've had a lot of success. The other great thing with this too is because Outlook can handle documents as well. I'm just going to take a bunch of documents here as well, and I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste those into that same folder and say, hey, I'm doing a bunch of filing for finance here. Oh, one of the files was too large for Outlook. Let me just pick a bunch of smaller ones here. I think that should be fine. We can paste those into our Outlook folder as well. So we're filing the emails and documents at the same time. So we can use that mapping. Yeah, still too big. The server doesn't allow above 25 megs, I believe. So, and I selected one that was above. And paste them in here. This is great to do, you know, some quick filing and some folder mappings. We do have other tools for actual migrations of stuff like this, but this just kind of gives you an idea where, you know, somebody's left the organization, they got 20,000 emails in their email exchange server. How do I get those out of theirs, and let's file them and archive them to a repository in our Documentum repository, for example, so we can search them if we need them later. And I say they had 20,000, you're probably looking at about an hour to file them, those all away for that user. Yep.
Troy, the last question we have was related to does the email live in both places, in Documentum and in the Exchange server?
Short answer is depends. The idea here is that, especially when we're dealing with map folders, we want our Documentum system to be the source of truth. So by default, our map folders will move the document or move the email into the repository. We don't keep it on the server. So you can see this finance folder doesn't have anything in it. But when I clicked on finance, I'm seeing a view of my finance folder in Documentum. So the idea here is only one of these lives on Documentum. It no longer lives in my Exchange server. That's for the map folders. The drag and drop here, when we drag and drop, we're putting a copy away. So it really depends on how you're filing. So if we're moving it into a folder that's mapped, it gets moved in. If we're just filing one-offs, we keep it in our inbox.
Great.
That being said, though, one of the new features as well that was in 5.8 was the ability to say, okay, here's a bunch of emails in Documentum. When I click on this, I want it to act just like if it was the email in my system. So when I actually select one of these here, for example, I go to a special area here where it opens up the email in line in my Outlook without having to double click open it separately. Yep. So Outlook becomes our interface for emails. Again, the whole point here is we use email or we use Outlook all day, every day for most people. Why we shouldn't have to leave it to be able to use our content.
Yeah, I know. I sure appreciate it, Troy. And that's the end of our questions for right now, Troy. If anybody has further questions, they can certainly get back to us at sales@westernim.com. We'll be happy to spend time with you, as much time as you need, to talk about specifics of what you might want to do. And I want to really thank all of you for coming on the webinar today and looking at the new features in the Documentum Outlook connector from Western IM. So thank you all.
It's been great, and yeah, always feel free to reach out and ask more questions. It's a lot of new features and a lot to go over. So definitely take it in and let us know.
Thanks so much, all.
Thanks, everyone.